All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good morning and welcome to All Up in Your Small Business, a webinar series hosted by the Greenville Eastern North Carolina Alliance. Thank you all so much for being here today. My name is Julia Davis, and I'm the Marketing and Investor Relations Coordinator for the Greenville ENC Alliance, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. If you're not familiar with our organization, let me provide a bit of background. We are a public-private partnership focused on promoting economic development in Greenville-Pitt County through industry recruitment, expansion and retention, development of sites and buildings, marketing and promotion of the community, workforce development, including talent attraction and retention, and small business and entrepreneurship efforts, which is why we're all here today. We're excited to host this webinar series on a monthly basis with speakers of various topics to help small business owners and entrepreneurs start, maintain, and grow their businesses. We're honored to have Josh Lewis from the Greenville ENC Alliance for today's session. He will present an economic overview for Greenville-Pitt County and provide insight on data impacting small businesses in the area. As the population grows and new businesses locate to our community, this presents an opportunity for small businesses to thrive. Just a few quick housekeeping notes before we dive into today's programming. If you have a question during the presentation, please drop it in the chat and there will be time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. But you're welcome to ask questions throughout the presentation and they will be addressed at the end. Please stay on mute during the presentation, and this webinar will be recorded, so if you have to leave early, we will send you the link to view the session within the next 24 hours. Now, without further delay, let's introduce Josh Lewis. Josh Lewis is a certified economic developer with more than 15 years of experience in economic, business, and workforce development. He has worked with local and regional organizations in North Carolina and Virginia. During his career, Josh has helped to announce more than 5,000 jobs and approximately $2 billion in capital investment. Josh obtained an MBA from the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and a bachelor's degree from Virginia Commonwealth University. Josh serves on the board of directors for the Pitt County Educational Foundation and chairs the organization's development committee. He is also a member of North Carolina Economic Development Association's Public Policy Committee. Outside of work, Josh enjoys history, outdoor activities, sports, and traveling. He and his wife Amanda have a daughter Millie and 2 dogs. They love being part of the Pitt County community and exploring all that Eastern North Carolina has to offer. Josh, thank you so much for being here with us today, and we're excited to hear your presentation.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm looking through the list here. Have a good crowd, but as everyone knows, this presentation will live on our YouTube channels for folks to access. And I think primarily what we find is important is that information sharing and data-driven decision making is key for not only large industry but also our small business community. So with that, I'm going to start the presentation. And can everyone see this okay?
Great. Yep, you're all good.
Well, Julia did a good job of kicking off the webinar, kind of explaining who we are and what we do. But I'll give a few minutes on this because I think it's important for the folks here to understand our position and what we are here to provide as far as in resources. The primary mission for us is to market the region, primarily Pitt County and Greenville, to attract new business opportunities, create new jobs, bring capital investment, and overall economic growth. And our vision is to be a catalyst to support a vibrant business environment that fosters prosperity, growth, and investment within the communities. A couple of years ago, I guess in the early spring, right around this time in 2023, we released our strategic plan. And the strategic plan basically broke down economic development in these different buckets and also described our role within the system and where we're trying to drive economic opportunities for the community. So you'll see in this list, you have product development, primarily for us, meaning real estate opportunities, greenfield sites, industrial spec buildings, things of that nature. Business development, and when we say business development for us, it really means business recruitment and attraction. We spend a lot of time engaging with commercial real estate brokers, developers, businesses directly, trade shows, partnering with the North Carolina Economic Development Partnership, as well as commerce, and others to go to trade shows, to go to markets, to promote the opportunities that we have here in Greenville and Pitt County. And another primary focus for us is the marketing and promotion of the community. So not only marketing the sites and buildings and opportunities that we have for businesses, but also marketing and promoting the business environment here. Why is it attractive not only for businesses, but also for folks, primarily, talent that's looking for a new position, the talent that we currently have graduating from our universities and community college system. But why is this place an area that you should consider starting your career and putting down roots? So spend a lot of time and efforts in that way. And then you have these other categories within the economic development circle that you see here. Small business entrepreneurship is one of them. And we think about ways in which we can be a convener, be a catalyst, and really think about, how do we as an organization make this small business system or small business opportunities here grow organically, and how do we share information? How do we get resources out there? And that's really what this webinar is about. And then you have these other opportunities for us to interact with the system, benchmarking and data being one, sharing as much information as possible, supporting the quality of life, the transportation, transit, and talent, and all those great things. And so wanted to kind of share with you how we see the system operating and the role which we're trying to play. So a couple key things here, and I'm going to stop. I got to make a transition here on my screen. 1 second. Okay. So, a key thing that we're trying to communicate is why is being knowledgeable about demographic and economic trends key for small business owners? And you think about this, if you're opening up a boutique, women's clothing store or some other type of entity, like what is it about the demographic and economic trends that you should consider before making those decisions? And I use that as an example, but it could be across sectors, it could be across different products, different lines of business. But why is that important? What is it about this data that can help you in making decisions about your business? The other one is how dependent is your business on the local revenue? How is your business selling primarily within the Greenville-Pitt County market? Are you selling externally? Like how dependent are you on those fellow community members to come by your establishment and patron and need you for their services? And is your sector capturing a larger share of the overall market? Meaning, are you within a sector? Let's stick with women's clothing. Are you in a sector that's growing as a share of revenues in the total market, or are you part of a business that is contracting? And how dependent are you on population growth compared to capturing market share? All these things can be kind of informed by data and informed by what's going on in the general market. And you can be positioned and be successful in each of these categories in different ways. If you're in a growing market, it's easier to capture a growing population or the expenditures coming from a growing population than it is to steal market share. Are you dependent on local revenues, or can you sell outside Greenville-Pitt County and diversify your revenue streams? Now, there's no right or wrong answer, but understanding where you are and how the data is communicating with you about where your opportunities lie is important for, I think, small business owners to understand. And overall, what factors fuel healthy economic growth? I think, early on when you're studying economic development, you understand that the manufacturing, sale of, and transportation of goods is what drives healthy economic development growth. You have two different ways of looking at a type of business. You have traded sectors and you have non-traded sectors. Traded sector businesses primarily being those entities that make a widget, produce some type of good, and sell out external or sell outside their community. And those revenues flow back into the community and thus then paid out in wages, of which those wages are then circulated within the local economy and multiplied by, once those expenses go out, the small business makes purchases and so on and so forth. And that's where you get your money multiplier. So not to get too technical, but the reality is you got to have all types of different businesses to make a healthy economic development, a healthy economic environment. And what we are focused on as an organization is primarily on the traded sector businesses. We look to attract companies that are going to locate in this community, make a product of which they sell outside the community, and then those large capital investments support the local government coffers through property tax revenues. But then also the wages paid out, which I'll get into a little bit later, is what is circulated in order to support small and local businesses and services. And that's why we are focused in economic development in this way, because we feel like it has the most impact on the system as a whole. So let's get right into the data. And I think it'll be important for folks to understand why Greenville and Pitt County is probably a very good place, regardless of your business, regardless of your sector, and looking into the future, a very healthy place to start laying down roots or starting to grow your business. And the chart in front of you, you'll see that overall the population in the United States is growing. Since 2020, you'll see, I don't know, can you see my arrow on the screen? You'll see that North Carolina's share of the U.S. population growth has increased, meaning there is a larger net migration into North Carolina than other places in the country. And so where North Carolina as a whole is capturing a larger market share of the population growth. For us in Greenville-Pitt County, this was data that we released at the end of 2024, and it was actually just updated just recently, and I'll show you in the next slide. But overall, we are maintaining our share of that population growth, which means we're growing at a healthy between 1 and 1.5% growth rate, which is a nice sustainable level of growth and healthy for the economy, but also healthy for the businesses that are located here that supply the needs and products and services that everybody depends on. I put this slide together as kind of juxtaposed against the old data. The U.S. Census Bureau just last week released new county level data that shows the adjustments and they've made to the population estimates for the localities. And you'll see back at the end of last year was projected that that Greenville-Pitt County had 175,000 residents. You'll see now with the adjustment at the top of the screen in 2024, we actually grew 5,000 more people than was originally estimated. So again, this was positive news, and I think everyone in the community that lives here can actually feel that. They can feel the growth. They can feel that there's energy here and things moving. And I think the data from the U.S. Census Bureau continues to support that. Another key component that drives a lot of small businesses, a lot of different industry within a local economy is housing. Because if you think about housing growth, you think about number one, population growth drives housing growth and housing development, or it should in theory and in practice. But you will see that as our population grows, the household size has continued to decline, which means we need more homes. And with each additional home, you can imagine the economic impact to the local economy, what is required from a subcontractor perspective, the timber, the products, the supplies needed that goes into the home. Housing development is a strong supplier of local economic development growth. And what you can see here in relation to the United States average in North Carolina is Greenville-Pitt County continues to grow, and we need more and more homes in order to keep up with that growth. Just looking at, if we maintained a 1% growth rate over the coming years, you're looking at, an additional, couple thousand people every year moving to the community. What does that do as far as in new homes? Well, for every 1,000 people, we probably need another 435 new residential units to match the market supply with the market demand. And so again, another key driver that can drive the success for small business. During the strategic planning process, we spent a lot of time looking at our what we should be considered peer communities. We looked at small MSA, small metro areas, statistical areas across the United States, and studied every small MSA on a set of factors. I think it ended up being something like 14 or 17 different factors, of which we narrowed down who we felt our peer communities were based on their economy. And you'll see the list here on this slide. And then we begin to track how well our economy is in relation to the peer average of that group, not only in their peer average, but also the North Carolina and United States movements. And so you'll see here over the last couple of years, which has probably improved with the new release of the U.S. Census data, is we have basically caught up with our peer group, caught up with the U.S. average, and actually surpassed them as far as in our growth. And that's positive news for the local economy, positive news for small business. Also good news is that, Pitt County, you'll see gross domestic product, the value of all goods and services produced here in Greenville-Pitt County has accelerated the last 4 or 5 years. Now, of course, some of this is driven by inflation rates, but not all of it, because even attaching this growth rate to 2017 dollars, you're still seeing a pretty significant growth rate over the last 5 years. And so more money's being spent, more money's being circulated, more products being produced. And we are punching above our weight. We are ranked 16th in population in the state of North Carolina out of 100 counties, but we have the 12th largest economy. And so this is also pointing in a very positive direction if you're looking at the economic system. So I won't get into too much detail about the about the growth rates here, but again, similar story. We are now getting in parity with the growth rates over the last 5 years. Now, I mentioned a few minutes ago that there are a couple different ways to look at the economy from a jobs or business perspective. You have the traded sectors and you have the non-traded sectors. Non-traded, again, as reference, can be your women's stores, your sports apparel stores, your beauty supply, your landscaping, all those different types of businesses. You can go through hundreds, if not thousands of them. But what we focus on primarily being the manufacturing side of the traded sectors. Greenville-Pitt County has a very strong density of large companies here, Thermo Fisher's, the Avients, the Hyster-Yales. We had announcements for 2 large companies locating in the community last year with Nipro and Boviet. And so when you start looking at, okay, well, what is driving the economy, we feel like we're fairly strong in a couple different sectors. Now, of course, small business, retail trades, healthcare, and manufacturing. Well, you'll see the GDP production with manufacturing has kind of, been on a, up and down schedule for the last 10 years. But you're starting to see a trend upward. And I think we're starting to see that trend upward in the activity that our organization is playing a role in. But along the way, healthcare and retail and all these other sectors have consistently grown as well. Another way to look at this is that retail continues to grow when the other traded sectors continue to grow, because the average wage, I think, for the manufacturing jobs in Greenville-Pitt County, which I'll cover that slide in a few minutes, is $75,000 compared to, the per capita wage rates of, retail workers and other sectors. They're not quite as high. So you have more economic multiplier impacts when you create higher paying manufacturing traded sector jobs. And so that's why it's important to small business to understand what drives their demand. Again, median household incomes, they begin to rise, healthy growth as far as when people are starting to earn more. Again, inflation eats into some of that, meaning you're earning more, but you might not be buying more as far as in quantity because you're spending more per unit. But overall, I think the median household incomes going up at a healthy rate is what's driving GDP growth beyond the inflation rate. Back to the employment labor side, you'll see that North Carolina is growing the share of overall employment in the United States. and that Greenville-Pitt County has kind of maintained their position as far as in their share of that growth, which means we are growing. We're not capturing more market share, but we're still growing with the trends of North Carolina as a whole. I think you see there on the right side of this slide, approaching, getting up in the 85,000 jobs here in the community. Key to this growth, which I was referencing just a few minutes ago. Again, this is kind of a technical slide, but you'll see that the national job growth rate rests right around, 3.5%, primarily 4%. You'll see these different sectors here. These sectors are key in industrial sectors for the community and also for the economic system as a whole. Again, back to the wages that are paid out. The good news is over the last several years, the manufacturing job growth rate in the U.S., Greenville has outpaced that job growth rate here in manufacturing. Greenville MSA has also outpaced the industry growth rate of the United States in the construction category over the last several years. Professional, scientific, and technical service jobs, again, outpacing the national growth rate, meaning that we are performing better across all of our primary industry sectors, more so than what is typical across the U.S. Getting back to the comments on the slide previously, you'll see that the wages paid in 2014 for manufacturing, healthcare, retail, you'll see in 2024. So the average manufacturing job paying almost $80,000 a year, average healthcare related job, retail related job. So again, back to the wages being dispersed into the economy and the multiplier impacts of the manufacturing sector on small business, you will see that healthcare and manufacturing continue to feed the retail sector. Looking at the cost of living comparisons, you will see that Greenville, North Carolina is actually doing fairly well in relation to our peer group. Cost of living, when it says that we are 93, again, just for reference, 100 would be the national average. And so you'll see that currently, based on this data at this point in time, which was a couple months ago, and it changes all the time, we were 7% below the national cost of living average. And you look at the peer group of which we track, you'll see that we fall somewhere in the middle of the pack as it relates to the demand placed on the residents here from a cost perspective. I will not spend too much time on this slide, but overall the message here is fairly clear. Inventory in the retail sector for, which is a lot of small businesses, inventory for space goes up. Vacancy rates, you'll see here 2.4% has creeped up a bit, but the vacancy rates overall remain stable. Asking rents have increased slightly. Market sale price per square foot has decreased slightly, but overall we still have net absorption slightly down from the year before, but again, still more space being built, more space being occupied. And again, occupancy rate is a mirror of vacancy rate, again, remaining fairly stable. Same thing with office, fairly stable market. I know a lot of small businesses depend on some smaller office units. Overall, again, kind of a stable market relative to the U.S. and large metro areas where they've seen extremely high vacancy rates, sometimes in the 20 or 30% range. This market here seems to be fairly stable. So a lot of interest to small business, especially in the services field. Consumer spending, you'll see as part of our GDP, that overall consumer spending in the economy is fairly high. You're looking at something $6 billion, which makes up a big part of the GDP overall. North Carolina, peer average, again, trending right along with those groups. Consumer spending per capita, you'll see that we actually outperform our peer group, meaning we have folks that are spending more per person in this economy than our peer group average, and slightly below the North Carolina average. but then you build in different components of the analysis, and you see that the cost of living here is lower. Inflation rates here have historically been slightly lower. So even though we may not be spending much per capita, you may be buying more or the same as some of these larger areas, just based on inflation and cost of living alone. Another slide. Consumer spending increases. If you're looking at a local market to open a business, you have to make a couple of determinations, of which I mentioned earlier. Am I coming into this market because there is a gap? Let's say the location quotient for this type of business is below the national average, meaning, if you have 10 businesses out of 100 that fall within landscaping, is this community only have 2 out of 100 businesses that are involved in landscaping? That presents a market opportunity. If all things remain equal, meaning this community has just as many establishments of a particular type of business, then you really are dependent on new market share, meaning new market growth, in order to get the revenues, or you have to steal or capture market share from others. So the good news here is that if you're coming into the market, there's room for growth, and you're not necessarily coming in and having to take market share from a competitor. You might just need to be competing for new market share. I think this singular line graph spoke a fairly clear message. $1 billion increase in retail sales over the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, that's $1 billion. Again, some of it due to inflation rates, but that's not the entire story. Other interesting, if you are in a particular small business that deals with tourism or visitors, you'll see that the tax collections, the occupancy tax collections, meaning the hotel market, is starting to see increased activity. We receive reports from our partners at the CVB that give us month-over-month comparisons on these data sets, and overall the market continues to grow. So you have more people visiting the community, you have more people staying in the hotels, you have more people going out to dine, shop, and entertain themselves. So again, another healthy indicator for small business. And with that, so these two, going back, these two should be correlated positively, and you'll see that these two slides kind of follow that path, meaning more visitors are coming in, visitor spending goes up. Positive news. Now, you can spend a lot of time as a small business owner to getting into your very specific sector, but for conversational purposes, we focused on the ones on this list. For those folks out there that would like more information on their specific business or their business sector, the U.S. Census Bureau has something called NAICS codes, North America Industrial Classification Systems, which give a code to every single business based on a category. And through that information, you can find out information about like entities, how many entities like you exist within your market, what are the revenues within those particular sectors, what are the job growth rates within those sectors. And so it's valuable information to have when starting a business. But overall, this picture paints another positive, this graph paints another positive picture, which is a lot of different sectors are seeing increases across multiple categories. So kind of the rising tide is impacting folks equally. And again, back to the visitor spending occupancy rates, you'll see that as visitors come in, the breakdown of where they spend their dollars. So if you're looking at, hey, I want to open up a boutique hotel, I want to open up this, men's apparel shop, I'd like to open up this outdoor recreation business, that there is a market there, and that market continues to grow. And studying the growth rates and studying the existing industry that's in place, I think those are all positive things to do, but it's also much easier to launch a business or grow your business when the market itself is growing. So overall, the economic impact of what we do and how it drives small business, I wanted to end on this note. Over the last several years, last 5 years to be exact, this organization had a goal of attracting and growing the local industry by 2,750 jobs. As of last year, we hit the mark of 2,740. Not sure how that happened. It looks like it's the numbers were fudged to make it match up. But that's the number. That's what we produced over the last 5 years. These are primarily, again, back to the traded sector jobs and manufacturing jobs. These are highly paid, medical device, pharmaceutical, advanced manufacturing. These are the types of jobs that pay higher wages that, again, circulate within the local economy and drive small business success. That's where you see the indirect job numbers, because, lots of folks use different multipliers for every manufacturing job, averaging a certain amount of money, but we just keep it very basic and say for every manufacturing job paying, $75,000 a year, you're likely going to create between 1 and 1.5 indirect jobs in order, to support the demands for products and services that job creates, or even supplier based jobs. And so we feel like over the last 5 years that 5,480 jobs have been created or will be created based on the work that we do. And at the end of the day, what it's all about, it's about total annual consumer expenditures in the economy and the property tax base increase, which pays, our local governments the tax dollars they need to provide the services which help our schools and community. But overall, annual earnings after taxes, you're looking at something around $200 million a year, between $200 and $215 million a year in revenue that's being circulated in the local economy based on the impact of these jobs and these investments that this organization helped to attract. Overall, a couple other things we have coming up this year, marketing wise, we have another shell building coming out of the ground. But the real takeaway again is, this. And this continues to go up, and you'll see that the data supports, over the last 4 or 5 years, supports the narrative that it's a healthy economic environment for multiple reasons. So with that, I'll end my presentation and leave time for comments or questions.
Thank you, Josh. So we can go ahead and get started with some Q&A. If you have a question for Josh, feel free to drop it in the chat and I can moderate. Or if you have additional context to share with your question, you can unmute. But as we wait for some questions, I wanted to share that our next All Up in Your Small Business webinar is scheduled for April 28th at 11:30 a.m. with Jeff Sunason, Director of Client Services for FT Locations. Jeff will be discussing the data tool featured on the Greenville ENC Alliance website, highlighting how this tool can assist both small business owners and prospective entrepreneurs in the Greenville MSA through data reflective of our local communities. Just a note that this will be our last webinar for the season before we take a summer break and pick it back up in the fall. Maria's going to drop a few links in the chat for the data tool featured on our website, as well as a link to register in advance for this meeting. And it looks like we do have a question here for you, Josh. Eric says, is Pitt County seeing a lot of retirees move into the area?
Well, we have a couple of good establishments here. Maria probably knows one much better than I, since it was her neighbor for a while. I wouldn't say that's what's driving our population growth. I don't have the numbers in front of me that suggest that, because our labor market continues to grow kind of positively or in correlation with the population growth. So labor market. So if the population is growing, but the labor force is kind of stagnant, that would probably lead you to believe that dependent folks are moving to the community, either children or retirees. And so I would say we probably see a healthy growth, but it's not going to be what's driving the overall economic growth of Pitt County.
Well, we only have a few minutes left, so before we go, I just wanted to thank Josh again for sharing his time and expertise with us today, and to all of you for attending. We hope you have several takeaways from today's webinar that will help you grow your businesses here in Greenville-Pitt County. And just a quick reminder that if you joined late or if you would like to rewatch the content, this recording will be emailed to you along with a link to register for any other upcoming webinars as part of this series.